Yo, what's good, everybody? Today I'm talking about Bruce Carrington finally becoming a world champion after a technical fight against a grizzled vet in Carlos Castro. Now, this fight was a very good fight, clean, technically advanced chess match. It was a competitive fight with the momentum swung both sides until eventually ShuShu ended the fight with probably the cleanest knockout via combination punching I've seen in a while. It started off cagey, loss of posturing, and they duked it out with their jabs. They both had snappy jabs, both super quick. Both fighters have a strong boxing fundamental, both good counter punches as well. It was actually hard to separate the two in the scorecard in the first couple rounds because they were basically trading jabs and looking for counters. But ShuShu took the reins in the third by actually initiating. He went first instead of exclusively waiting to counter, and instead he put his punches together and threw Castro off a little bit. I thought by doing so he outworked and outlanded Castro and landed several clean uppercuts as well, and thus won him the round. However, right in the very next round, Castro obliged with that style and fought fire with fire. He started trading with Bruce, and you could see ShuShu's aggression lowered a little bit because of that. And Castro lands a chopping right after Bruce jabbed to the body that took ShuShu's legs. The shot probably shook his equilibrium because his balance was off and he stumbled back. Castro immediately noticed and he hounded ShuShu the remainder of the round. He was letting his hands go looking for the finish, and he was looking real bad for ShuShu. But he hung tough. He held when he needed to, and despite his balance being inadequate at the moment, his mind was still in proper working order, and so he kept his hands up, moved his head, and survived the round. But moving on to the fifth round, ShuShu seemed to want to re-establish control, to show that he was fully recovered. But he got hit again with the right hand that buzzed him a little bit and forced him to be more mobile, use the ring instead of just standing and trading. But by the sixth round, ShuShu was completely recovered. He was letting his hands go again, and in the seventh, he seemed to have found his groove. I believe he loosened up a little bit, he got in his mojo, and he stopped throwing everything with so much power behind it, and his right hand started finding the mark a lot more frequently. Round 7 in totality was a very good sharpshooting round from Bruce, where he probably buzzed Castro twice with two right hands. And honestly, more of the same in the 8th. But then came the 9th round, where Bruce Carrington announced himself to the world by doing what Bruce Carrington does: counter punching. That finishing sequence was marvelous. ShuShu threw a jab, knowing that Castro was going to throw one right back. Bruce waited for the return fire, slipped on the outside, and launched a devastating right hand counter. Dipped inside to smother Castro's potential counter, framed with his right forearm to create sufficient space, then threw a left hook to the body, followed by a right hook to the head, in which at this point, right, Castro was already out. He was done. But Bruce didn't know or care. He was in his bag. He followed up the right hook with another left hook that landed square on the chin, and finally another right over the top as Castro was on his way down. And that was that. Every shot hit the mark, and Castro couldn't beat the count. I'm surprised that he was even conscious. That beautiful sequence took less than 3 seconds to execute. It was spectacular. Like I said before, it's been a while that I've seen pinpoint accuracy from a fight-ending combination like that. Ben Whitaker had a similar stoppage last year, but this, in my opinion, was a level above. This was more fluid. This, to me, was a perfect example of beautiful violence. But I digress. Overall, this was a great fight, a very good matchup. Castro yet again proved that he's a tough out for anybody. He hurt ShuShu, and he made him dig deep to realize his lifelong dream of being a world champion. Again, the fight was very technically advanced. Both fighters showed their skills and IQ, and the fight was competitive. It had its ebbs and flows, but ultimately, ShuShu was just a better fighter. As for what's next, it sucks to say, but for me, I believe ShuShu should go up to 130. You know, he's about to be 29 and he's been boiling down to make the featherweight limit for years. I know he wants to make history and unify the division, and I love how he even wants to attempt that shit. But I've seen this man look severely drained before, where his face looked sunken in, and I feel the weight cut is taking a toll on his punch resistance. But shit, if he wants to stay as a featherweight, I need to see him in there with the other champs. You know, it doesn't matter if it's Nick Ball or Espinoza or Leo. They all need to mix it up, and I believe all of those matchups would result in a great fight. But that's it. That's all. I want to know who you want ShuShu to fight next. And I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.